You're standing on a tiny floating island, nothing but sky in every direction. There's no ground below you, just clouds and an infinite blue abyss. You can feel the wind on your face, and for a second, it feels peaceful, like you're the only person in the world. Then you look around and think, okay, now what? That's when Aloft kicks in and gently, well, not really gently, reminds you that this is a survival game. Peace? Yeah, that's temporary. Survival? That's your full-time job now. When I first started playing Aloft, I wasn't sure what to expect. Floating islands and survival mechanics? Cool idea, but I figured it might just be another crafting game with a quirky twist. Boy, was I wrong. This game doesn't just feel different, it is different. Everything you know about survival games gets flipped upside down when your home can drift through the sky like some magical rock-powered boat. And let me tell you, steering a flying island? Not as easy as it sounds. The first time I set up a sail on my little floating island, I felt like a genius. Look at me, I thought. I'm mastering the skies. Then the wind caught wrong, my island tilted, and half of my supplies rolled off the edge into oblivion. That's when I realized two things. First, balance is really important when your house is floating, and second, I had no idea what I was doing. That pretty much sums up the first hour of playing Aloft. You fumble, you fail, and then you slowly start figuring things out. And honestly, that's part of what makes it so fun. Let's start with the basics. In Aloft, you're stranded on a tiny island floating high above the clouds. You don't know why you're there or how you got there. Honestly, the game doesn't waste time explaining it either. You're just there, and it's up to you to survive. You'll start by gathering resources, wood, plants, rocks, the usual survival game stuff. But instead of building a cozy little hut and calling it a day, you're tasked with creating an entire flying base. Yep, your island can move, and you're the one in charge of steering it. At first, this feels like the coolest thing ever. You can look out at the horizon, spot another floating island in the distance and think, I'm going there. And then you actually try to get there, and things get interesting. See, moving your island isn't as simple as slapping on a sail and calling it a day. You've got to work with the wind. And let me tell you, the wind is not always your friend. There were times I thought I had everything lined up perfectly, only to watch my island spin in circles like a very confused top. It's frustrating, sure, but it's also kind of hilarious. Every mistake is a lesson, and every little success feels like a win. When I finally managed to steer my island toward a bigger, resource-rich area without crashing, I felt like a genius. For about 5 seconds. Then I accidentally tilted my island too far, and my carefully built crafting station slid right off the edge. Back to square one. Exploration is where Aloft really shines. The sky is full of floating islands, each one with its own surprises. Some are lush and peaceful, perfect for gathering resources. Others? Let's just say they're not exactly welcoming. I remember landing on one island that looked like a paradise. Plenty of trees, a little pond, and even some berries to gather. It felt too good to be true, and spoiler, it was. Before I could even finish gathering supplies, a pack of enemies came out of nowhere and completely wrecked me. Lesson learned: don't trust an island that looks too nice. The enemies in this game aren't pushovers, either. They're fast, aggressive, and they'll do everything they can to ruin your plans. You've got to stay on your toes, always ready for a fight, because these guys do not wait for you to get comfortable. Speaking of enemies, let's talk about defenses. You can't just build a base and hope for the best. If you don't fortify your island, you're going to have a bad time. And I don't just mean throwing up a few walls and calling it good. You've got to think strategically. Where to place your structures, how to balance your island's weight, and how to keep enemies from tearing everything apart. There's a level of strategy here that I didn't expect, and honestly, it's what kept me coming back. Every attack feels like a test of your planning and creativity. And when you survive, it's the best feeling in the world. Now, let's talk crafting. This isn't your typical make a campfire and call it a day setup. You're building an entire flying home, complete with sails, windmills, and whatever else you can dream up. The freedom to design your island is one of the game's best features. Want to build a cozy little hut? Go for it. Want to create a massive fortress with multiple layers and fancy decorations? The sky's the limit, literally. I tried to build this big tower on my island, thinking it would look super cool. And it did look cool, until I realized the weight distribution was off, and every time the wind shifted, my island tilted. Watching all my hard work slide off into the void was equal parts heartbreaking and hilarious. Pro tip: don't build too high unless you've got a solid plan for keeping everything balanced. Of course, not everything in Aloft is sunshine and perfect skies. The game has its challenges, and not all of them are the fun kind. For one, the learning curve can be steep. The game doesn't hold your hand, so you'll spend a lot of time figuring things out through trial and error. While that's part of the charm for some people, it can also be frustrating. There were moments where I found myself completely stuck, unsure of what to do next. And let's not forget the grind. Like most survival games, Aloft can get a little repetitive at times. Gather resources, craft, build, repeat. It's satisfying if you're in the right mindset, but if you're someone who craves constant variety, it might wear on you after a while. Another thing that caught me off guard was the risk of falling. I mean, you're on a floating island. Falling is kind of inevitable, right? But it's still nerve-wracking when it happens. 1 second, you're walking along, minding your own business, and the next, you've stepped too close to the edge, and gravity decides to ruin your day. The first time it happened to me, I let out this dramatic gasp like I was in a movie. It's funny in hindsight, but in the moment, pure panic. Despite its flaws, Aloft is one of those games that sticks with you. It's not perfect, but it doesn't need to be. The sense of freedom, the thrill of exploring the skies, and the joy of creating your own little flying world. It all comes together to create something truly unique. It's not just a survival game, it's an adventure, and that's what makes it so special. So, is Aloft worth playing? If you're a fan of survival games, and you're looking for something fresh and different, absolutely. It's challenging, creative, and packed with moments that'll make you laugh, curse, and maybe even cheer out loud. But if you're someone who likes their games a little more straightforward, this might not be the one for you. It's a game that rewards patience, creativity, and a willingness to learn from your mistakes. And honestly, that's what makes it so rewarding. At the end of the day, Aloft is what you make of it. Want to build the most ridiculous flying fortress imaginable? Go for it. Want to focus on exploring and seeing just how far you can go? That's cool too. The game gives you the tools, and it's up to you to decide how to use them.